Welcome to the streets where keep it real, only shop at Suburban. My name's Urban Mahoney, and today we're reviewing Iron Man. Iron Man was released May 2nd, 2008, and was directed by Jon Favreau. With $140 million and a previously shunned actor, this movie launched the now infamous Marvel Cinematic Universe. The MCU now has 37 mainline movies and 20 mainline seasons of television, with multiple specials and alternate universes that have their own movies and shows. I've grown up watching every MCU project, but in recent years, it's got way too hard to keep up with everything. So, leading into Avengers Doomsday, coming out in December of this year, 12 months away, I'm going to be watching every mainline MCU project. This project can get a little tricky, but for me, I'm counting everything in the Infinity Saga, including shorts, except for shows, excluding the Defender shows. Why am I keeping the Defender shows, you might ask? Well, number one, Punisher is going to be in Spider-Man Brand New Day this July, and so there's a higher chance for him to be in Doomsday. I don't think he will be, but there's a higher chance. And number two, I started watching them earlier this year in preparation for Daredevil Born Again, because before Born Again, I'd only seen the first 2 seasons of Daredevil. So, I'm already halfway through that, might as well finish it. For the Multiverse Saga, I will be watching every movie except for Deadpool and Wolverine. I love Deadpool 3, but if I were to count that, I'd have to count the entire Fox universe, and I just don't think I have enough time for that. But, if I do, I will start with the Fox universe before I go into any of the extended MCU stuff. Continuing on with the Multiverse Saga, I will watch every live-action show, special, everything like that, and the animated Black Panther show. I think it's called Eyes of Wakanda. Everything else, I'm just going to wait and see if I have time for them, such as the Fox timeline, the Spider-Verse movies, the animated Disney Plus projects, and everything in between. So, after this long-ass intro, I think it's time we get into We open up with a military convoy, and Tony Stark is chatting with some soldiers. And then the convoy is attacked by people using Stark Industries weapons, as we see the soldiers dying and Tony Stark being kidnapped, as we cut to a title card. 36 hours earlier, we see Obadiah Stane accepting an award for Tony because he's out partying. So, Colonel Rhodes scolds him, which leads to a reporter getting Tony's stick. The reporter wakes up and Pepper Potts leads her out, and Pepper tells Tony that he's late for his private jet. Tony and Colonel Rhodes arrive at a military base to shove Stark Industries' new Jericho missile as we revisit the intro. Tony wakes up in an underground dungeon and his heart is hooked up to a car battery so that shrapnel doesn't puncture his heart. A bunch of terrorists named the Ten Rings with Stark Industries guns tells Tony to recreate the Jericho missile. Tony and his cellmate Jensen build a miniature arc reactor to replace the car battery, and the arc reactor can also power a suit of armor, which causes the terrorists to get suspicious, so their boss Raza checks on them and tells them they only have a day to finish recreating the missiles. Tony and Jensen finish building the suit and Tony puts it on, as 2 of the terrorists get blown up, which causes Jensen to distract the terrorists to buy Tony time. Tony emerges from the dungeon inside the suit and beats up some terrorists, and when Tony gets up to the opening of the cave, he sees Jensen dying. Then Tony comes out of the cave and lights the compound on fire and takes flight, but he crashes into the desert. We see Tony running through the desert, and a helicopter lands right in front of him, and Colonel Rhodes steps out and rescues Tony. Tony gets back home and has a press conference with Obadiah, as we see Pepper Potts meeting someone named Phil Coulson from Strategic Homeland Intervention Enforcement Logistics Division. Tony announces that Stark Industries will stop making weapons, and Tony tells Obadiah he wants to go into the arc reactor business. Pepper changes out Tony's arc reactor, and we see Tony beginning work on his Mark II suit, as we see the Ten Rings finding the remains of the Mark I suit. Tony tests his Mark II jet boots, and it fails miserably, and Pepper watches him test out his repulsor. Obadiah meets with Tony about his arc reactor, but Tony leaves to test out the Mark II jet boots again, and this time it goes good, and Tony takes the Mark II suit for a spin, and when Tony gets too high, the suit freezes and almost kills him. Pepper gifts Tony his original arc reactor, and we see the Ten Rings reconstructing the Mark I armor as we cut to Tony beginning work on the Mark III suit. While the suit is being made, Tony goes to a charity event and greets Stan Lee and meets Phil Coulson and sets up a meeting as Tony goes to dance with Pepper, which leads to them arguing outside and almost sharing a kiss. So Tony goes to get them drinks with extra olives, and the reporter from the beginning shows Tony pictures of his weapons being used recently. So Tony and Obadiah argue about it. Tony watches the news of the Ten Rings attacking using his weapons. So Tony suits up in the Mark III armor and attacks the Ten Rings and destroys their missiles. And on his way back, the military try to kill Tony in the air. But everyone survives, and Tony tells Colonel Rhodes that he was the one in the suit. The Ten Rings meet with Obadiah, and he steals the Mark I suit and kills them. Pepper downloads some files from Obadiah's computer that proves he paid the Ten Rings to kill Tony. And after she leaves, Obadiah realizes what she was doing, so Pepper brings Phil Coulson with her as she leaves. Pepper calls Tony, but Obadiah is already there and gives Tony short-term paralysis and pulls the arc reactor out of his chest. So Pepper calls Colonel Rhodes and tells him about Obadiah. We see Tony dying, but he uses the arc reactor that Pepper gave him to survive, as we see Obadiah putting the arc reactor in his new and improved suit. Colonel Rhodes gets to Tony's house and finds him on the floor as we cut to Pepper, Phil, and some S.H.I.E.L.D. agents going to arrest Obadiah. Tony puts on his Mark III suit. Colonel Rhodes looks at the Mark II and says, "Next time," as we see the Ironmonger attacking Pepper and the agents. Iron Man arrives and has a full-on fight with the Ironmonger that results in the two flying into the sky. We see the Ironmonger suit freezing, just like the Mark II, and it falls back down to the ground. Back on the ground, Ironmonger appears behind Iron Man, and they continue their fight as we see Pepper overloading the big arc reactor, and it blasts Obadiah and he falls into it, causing it to explode and kill him. The next day, Phil Coulson gives Tony his alibi, and Tony goes to a press conference, and instead of using the alibi, he announces to the world that he is Iron Man. In an end credits scene, we meet the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., Nick Fury, as he tells Tony that he's now a part of a bigger universe, and that he wants to talk to him about the Avengers Initiative. That felt good. This review has been a long time coming. After a series of unfortunate events, this video is finally coming out. I first started work on it back in October of 2023. So, I think it's only fair to start with my negatives, and then we can just have a blast with our positives. I really only have one complaint, and that's the structure of the movie. The structure of the movie just feels way too inconsistent for me. You start off with this really cool action set pieces, the intro, with the missiles and the convoy, all that. But then you flash back. Okay, fine, that's acceptable. But then after he gets out of the cave, it just didn't work for me. I don't know how to describe it, just didn't work. Now it's time for some positives. The first positive I want to talk about is RDJ. He is incredible in this movie. He just gives off the perfect tone for Tony Stark. You start off with him being just stupid rich, is how I'll call it. And then after he sees what his weapons can do, his whole personality changes. And then at the end where he goes, "I am Iron Man." RDJ was the perfect fit for this role. I can't see anyone else playing Iron Man. Another thing I loved is how the movie looks compared to movies nowadays. The Iron Man suits look incredible, especially when they're in action scenes, like the scene where Iron Man blows up the missiles. This one is more of a mixed positive. I really liked how they integrated the setup into the plot instead of just a cameo or a big reveal as an end credit scene like what we get later on down the line. But at the same time, was it really needed for the first movie? Leave it up for you to decide. I thought it was fine. Okay, now let's get into Iron Man is almost masterful with what it does and how it set the groundwork for the future. So, I'm going to give it 4.5 stars out of 5. And the Urban Production slate. This is the first slate I'm giving out on this channel. I do plan to include an explanation of what it is in a future video. I honestly do think Iron Man is one of the most rewatchable superhero movies. I would know. I've probably watched it a total of 10 plus times just in the last 2 years to make this video. Anyways, it's Urban Mahoney clocking out.